Exodus 35 verse 1. And Moshe assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel, and said to them, These are the words which Adonai has commanded you to do. Work is done for 6 days, but on the 7th day it shall be set apart to you, a Sabbath of rest to Adonai. Anyone doing work on it is put to death. Do not kindle a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. And Moshe spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, This is the word which Adonai commanded, saying, Take from among you a contribution to Adonai. Everyone whose heart so moves him, let him bring it as a contribution to Adonai, gold and silver and bronze, and blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skin dyed red, and fine leather, and acacia wood, and oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for sweet incense, and shoam stones, and stones to be set in the shoulder garment, and in the breastplate. And let them, the wise-hearted among you, come to make all that Adonai has commanded: the dwelling place, its tent, and its covering, its hooks, and its boards, its bars, its columns, and its sockets, the ark, and its poles, the lid of atonement, and the veil of the covering, the table, and its poles, and all its utensils, and the showbread, and the lampstand for the light, and its utensils, and its lamps, and the oil for the light, and the incense slaughter place, and its poles, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the door at the entrance of the dwelling place, the slaughter place of ascending offering, which is bronze grating, its poles, and all its utensils, the basin and its stands, the screens of the courtyard, its columns and their sockets, and the covering for the gates of the courtyard, the pegs of the dwelling place, and the pegs of the courtyard, and their cords, the woven garment to do service in the set-apart place, the set-apart garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons to serve as priests. And all the congregation of the children of Israel withdrew from the presence of Moshe, and everyone whose heart lifted him up, and everyone whose spirit moved him came, and they brought the contribution to Adonai for the work of the tent of appointment, and for all its service, and for the set-apart garments. And they came, both men and women, all whose hearts moved them, and brought earrings and nose rings, and rings and necklaces, all golden goods, even everyone who made a wave offering of gold to Adonai. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram's skin, dyed red, and fine leather, brought them. Everyone who would make a contribution to Adonai of silver or bronze brought it, and everyone with whom was found acacia wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the wise-hearted women spun yarn with their hands, and brought what they had spun, the blue and the purple and scarlet material, and the fine linen. And all the women whose hearts lifted them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair. And the rulers brought shoham stones, and the stones to be set in the shoulder garment and in the breastplate, and the spices and the oil for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a voluntary offering to Adonai, all the men and women whose hearts moved them to bring all kinds of work which Adonai, by the hand of Moshe, had commanded to be done. And Moshe said to the children of Israel, See, Adonai called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, and he has filled him with the spirit of Elohim, in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all work, to make designs, to work in gold, and in silver, and in bronze, and in cutting of stones for setting, and in carving wood, and to work in all workmanship of design. And he has put in his heart the ability to teach, in him and Olaviah, son of Ahishamach, of the tribe of Dan, and he filled them with skill to do all work of the engraver and the designer and embroiderer, in blue and in purple, in scarlet material and in fine linen, and a weaver doing any work, and makers of designs, and Bezalel and Oholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whom Adonai has given wisdom and understanding to know how to do all work for the service of the set-apart place, shall do according to all that Adonai has commanded. And Moshe called Bezalel and Oholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whose heart Adonai had given wisdom, everyone whose heart lifted him up, to come and do the work. And they received from Moshe all the contribution which the children of Israel had brought from the work of the service of making the set-apart place. But they still brought to him voluntary offerings every morning. So all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the set-apart place came, each from the work he was doing. And they spoke to Moshe, saying, The people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which Adonai commanded us to do. Then Moshe commanded, and they sent this word throughout the camp, saying, Let neither man nor woman do any more work for the contribution of the set-apart place. And the people were withheld from bringing. For what they had was enough for all the work to be done, more than enough. Then all the wise-hearted ones among them who worked on the dwelling place made 10 curtains, woven of fine linen, and blue and purple, and scarlet material. They made them with cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. The length of each curtain was 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, and all the curtains having one measure. And he joined 5 curtains, one to another, and the other 5 curtains he joined, one to another. And he made loops of blue on the edge of the end curtain of one set. The same he did on the edge of the end curtain of the other set. 50 loops he made on one curtain, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the end curtain of the second set. The loops held one curtain to another. And he made 50 hooks of gold, and joined the curtain to each other with the hooks, and the dwelling place became one. And he made curtains of goat's hair for the tent over the dwelling place. He made 11 curtains. The length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, the 11 curtains having one measure. And he joined 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves. And he made 50 loops on the edge of the end curtain in one set, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain of the second set. And he made 50 bronze hooks to join the tent to be one. And he made a covering for the tent of ram's skins, dyed red, and the covering of fine leather above that. And for the dwelling place he made boards of acacia wood standing up. The length of each board was 10 cubits, and the width of each board a cubit and a half. Each board had 2 tenons for binding one to another. So he did to all the boards of the dwelling place. And he made boards for the dwelling place, 20 boards for the south side. And he made 40 sockets of silver to go under the 20 boards, and 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the dwelling place, for the north side, he made 20 boards, and their 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under the one board, and 2 sockets under the other board. And he made 6 boards for the west side of the dwelling place. And he made 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the dwelling place, and they were double beneath, and similarly they were complete to the top by 1 ring. So he did to both of them for the 2 corners. And there were 8 boards, and their silver sockets, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under each of the boards. And he made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards on the other side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards of the dwelling place at the rear westward. And he made the middle bar to pass through the boards from one end to the other. And he overlaid the boards with gold, and their rings he made of gold to the holders of the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. And he made a veil of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine worked linen, and was made with cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. And he made 4 columns of acacia wood for it, and overlaid them with gold, with their hooks of gold, and he cast 4 sockets of silver for them. And he made a covering for the tent door of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine woven linen made by a weaver, and its 5 columns with their hooks, and he overlaid their tops and their rings with gold, but their 5 sockets were of bronze. And Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And he overlaid it with clean gold inside and outside, and made a molding of gold all around it. And he cast 4 rings of gold for its 4 feet, 2 rings on its one side, and 2 rings on its other side. And he made poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he put the poles into the rings at the sides of the ark to lift the ark. And he made a lid of atonement of clean gold, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide. And he made 2 cherubim of beaten gold. He made them from the 2 ends of the lid of atonement, 1 cherub at one end on this side, and the other cherub at the other end on that side. He made the cherubim from the lid of atonement, from the 2 ends. And the cherubim spread out their wings above, and covered the lid of atonement with their wings, with their faces toward each other. The faces of the cherubim were turned toward the lid of atonement. And he made the table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, and 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And he overlaid it with clean gold, and made a molding of gold all around it. And he made a rim of a handbreadth all around it, and made a molding of gold for the rim all around it. And he cast 4 rings of gold for it, and he put the rings on the 4 corners that were at its 4 legs. The rings were next to the rim, as holders for the poles to lift the table. And he made the poles of acacia wood to lift the table, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the utensils which were on the table, its dishes, and its cups, and its bowls, and its jars for pouring, of clean gold. And he made the lampstand of clean gold. He made the lampstand of beaten work, its base, and its shaft, its cups, its ornamental knobs, and its blossoms were from it. And 6 branches came out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out the other side. There were 3 cups like almond flowers on one branch, with ornamental knob and blossom, and 3 cups like almond flowers on the other branch, a knob and a blossom. So for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand were 4 cups like almond flowers, its knobs and blossoms, and a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, for the 6 branches coming out of it. Their knobs and their branches were of it, All of it was one beaten work of clean gold. And he made it 7 lamps, and its snuffers, and its trays of clean gold. He made it of a talent of clean gold, and all its utensils. And he made the incense slaughter place of acacia wood, a cubit long, and a cubit wide, square, and 2 cubits high. Its horns were of it. And he overlaid it with clean gold, its top and its sides all around, and its horns. And he made a molding for it of gold all around it. And he made 2 rings of gold for it under its molding, and its 2 corners on both sides, as holders for the poles with which to lift it. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the set-apart anointing oil, and the clean incense of sweet spices, according to the work of the perfumer. And he made the slaughter place of ascending offering of acacia wood, 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits wide, square, and 3 cubits high. And he made its horns on its 4 corners. The horns were of it, and he overlaid it with bronze. And he made all the utensils of the slaughter place, the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, and the forks, and the fire holders. He made all its utensils of bronze. And he made a grating of the slaughter place, a bronze network under its rim, midway from the bottom. And he cast 4 rings for the 4 corners of the bronze grating as holders for the poles. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with bronze. And he put the poles into the rings on the sides of the slaughter place, with which to lift it. And he made the slaughter place hollow with boards. And he made the basin of bronze, and its stands of bronze, from the bronze mirrors of the serving woman who did service at the door of the tent of appointment. And he made the courtyard, and the south side of the screens of the courtyard were of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long, their 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the north side the screens were 100 cubits long, their 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And the west side there were screens of 50 cubits, their 10 columns and their 10 sockets. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the east side, eastward, 50 cubits, 15 cubits of screen on the one side, with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets, and 15 cubits of screen the other side of the courtyard gate, on the side and that side, with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. All the screens of the courtyard all around were of fine woven linen, and the sockets for the columns were of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver, and the overlay of their tops was of silver. And all the columns of the courtyard had bands of silver. And the covering for the gate of the courtyard was the work of an embroiderer, of blue and purple and scarlet material, and of fine woven linen, and 20 cubits long, and the height along its width was 5 cubits, corresponding to the screens of the courtyard. And the columns were 4, and their sockets of bronze 4. Their hooks were of silver, and the overlay of their tops and their bands was of silver. And all the pegs of the dwelling place and of the courtyard all around were of bronze. 1 Kings 7, verse 13. And sovereign Shlomo sent and brought Hiram from Tzor. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tzor, a bronze worker, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding, and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to Sovereign Shlomo and did all his work. And he cast 2 columns of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of each. And he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to put on the tops of the columns. The height of one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. A lattice network with wreaths of chainwork for the capitals, which were on top of the columns, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other capital. And he made the columns and 2 rows of pomegranates above the network, all around to cover the capitals that were on top. And so he did for the other capital. And the capitals that were on top of the columns in the hall were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. And there were capitals above also on the 2 columns by the bulge, which was next to the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows on each of the capitals all around. And he set up the columns by the porch of the Hauptfleisch. And he set up the column on the right and called its name Yakin. And he set up the column on the left and called its name Boaz. And on the top of the columns was lily work. Thus the work of the columns was completed. And he made the sea of cast metal, 10 cubits from one rim to the other, round all about, and 5 cubits high, and a line of 30 cubits measured around it. And below its rim were ornaments all around, 10 to a cubit, all the way around the sea. The ornaments were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, and 3 facing west, and 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set upon them, and all their back parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and its rim was shaped like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. 1 Kings 7, verse 40. And Hiram made the pots, and the shovels, and the bowls. And Hiram completed doing all the work that he was to do for Sovereign Shlomo on the house of Adonai. The 2 columns, and the bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the columns, and the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals, which were on top of the columns, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the columns, and the 10 stands, and the 10 basins on the stands, and the 1 sea, and 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots, and the shovels, and the bowls, and all these utensils which Hiram made for Sovereign Shlomo, for the house of Adonai, were of polished bronze. The sovereign had them cast in clay in the district of Yarden, between Sikoth and Tarethan. And Shlomo left all the utensils unweighed, because they were many, nor was the weight of the bronze searched out. So Shlomo made all the utensils for the house of Adonai, the slaughter place of gold, and the table of gold on which was the showbread, and the lampstands of refined gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, in the front of the speaking place, with the flowers and the lamps and the snuffers of gold, and the basins and the snuffers and the bowls and the ladles and the fire holders of refined gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most set apart place, and for the doors of the house of the Hekal. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 1. Indeed, concerning the service to the set-apart ones, it is unnecessary for me to write to you, for I know your eagerness, about which I boast of you to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your ardor has stirred up most of them. But I sent the brothers, lest our boasting on behalf of you should be made empty in this part, in order that, as I said, you were ready, lest if some Macedonians come with me and find you not ready, we, not to speak of you, should be put to shame because of our belief. So I thought it necessary to appeal to the brothers to come to you in advance and arrange your promised blessing beforehand, this to be ready as a blessing and not as greediness. And this, he who sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly, and he who sows on blessing shall also reap on blessing. Let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not of grief or of necessity, for Elohim loves a joyous giver, and Elohim is able to make all favor overflow toward you, that you, also having all you need in every way, have plenty for every good work. As it has been written, He scattered abroad, He gave to the poor, His righteousness remains forever. And he who supplies seed to the sower, and bread for food, shall supply and increase the seed you have sown, and increase the fruit of your righteousness, being enriched in every way for all simplicity, which works out thanksgiving to Elohim through us. Because the rendering of this service not only supplies the needs of the set-apart ones, but also is overflowing through many thanksgivings to Elohim. Through the proof of this service, they esteem Elohim on the submission of your confession to the good news of Messiah and generosity in sharing with them and all men, and by their prayer for you, who long for you because of the exceeding favor of Elohim in you. Thanks also to Elohim for his unspeakable gift. Revelation 11, verse 1. And a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger stood, saying, Rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim, and the slaughter place, and those worshipping in it. But cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations, and they shall trample the set-apart city under foot for 42 months. And I shall give unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clad in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees, and the 2 lampstands that are standing before Elohim on the earth. And if anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out from their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if anyone wishes to harm them, he has to be killed in that way. These possess authority to shut the heaven, so that no rain fall in the days of their prophecy. And they possess authority over waters, to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they wish. And when they have ended their witness, the beast coming up out of the pit of the deep shall fight against them, and overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Mitzrayim, where also our Master was impaled. And some of the peoples and tribes and tongues and nations see their dead bodies for 3.5 days, and not allow their dead bodies to be placed into tombs. And those dwelling on the earth rejoice over them and exult, and they shall send gifts to each other, because these 2 prophets tortured those dwelling on the earth. And after the 3.5 days, a spirit of life from Elohim entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from the heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up into the heaven in a cloud, and the enemies saw them. And in that hour there came to be a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. And in the earthquake 7,000 men were killed, and the rest became afraid, and gave esteem to Elohim of the heaven.